Anyway, dude, today we were going to talk about... You keep threatening to dig into that singles box of yours, so I think we should do it.
I am more than happy to, after we cue that intro. So yeah, like you said, man, I've been threatening to show off the box of single self-contained issues. I think just to kind of reset context for some of our viewers, I'm a huge fan of the comic book medium in all of its, entireties, its eccentricities, etc.
What gave it away?
Sorry?
What gave it away? Sorry, that was shitty of me.
Certainly not the name of our podcast, that's for sure. But hopefully, watch the space. Hopefully soon we'll have some cool new logos that might give it away a bit more than
You're putting pressure on us, yeah? Nah.
We're working on things. But yeah, and the one thing that I love about not just the comic book medium, but the written storytelling medium in general is I have the hugest amount of respect for people that tell a good story, be it in a movie, be it in a trilogy of movies, or a series, a very well-constructed, well-woven season of a series. Even like we mentioned in some of the other podcasts, like when we talk about shows like Rick and Morty, South Park, Community, even in those, sometimes they have single episodes that just blow your mind, tell you the story that either creeps you out, freaks you out, makes your jaw drop, makes you cry, whatever it is. And I have the utmost respect for people that can do that in, call it one sitting, one single episode, 30 minutes, hour long. In the comic book world, maybe in one graphic novel, or dare I say one single self-contained issue. So I've kind of started a little offshoot collection, I guess you can say, not just the traditional comics, not just the graphic novels or the science stuff, but I've got a box full of these comics that were singular self-contained stories, start, middle, end. And it's quite interesting because in the old days, early days of DC, early days of Marvel, pretty much all of their stuff was self-contained. So like the first appearance of Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, they're pretty much self-contained stories in one issue. So on that note, I do have a couple of like the True Believers reprints of things. Amazing Fantasy, Giant Size X-Men. This is a cool one. It's a Wolverine versus Sabretooth one. And I actually own the original comic of this as well in my Wolverine collection. It was just an awesome, no-holds-barred Wolverine versus Sabretooth Duke Fest. I've got a reprint of first Punisher when he gets on the scene. Those kinds of things happening there. In the same box, actually, sort of, I suppose you could say middle-ish, there are a couple just good self-contained stories, some that I got recently, like the questions. And they were actually part of a longer, bigger series of the question, but it's interesting how each one of these things are just a self-contained question, mystery, story.
Dude, it's actually, that's one character that's always eluded me and I've always wanted to know more about was the question.
They're very cool stories. I haven't read that one in particular, but on what you're saying, I fell in love with the question character through the Justice League animated cartoon show. And I'm now on a quest to try and get some more question stuff about him, the detective side of him. The character's quite a fascinating character, kind of intertwined with conspiracy theories and all of that larger plots at play that most people don't see, that he does pick up on all the threads on. And in the comic books, he's quite a damaged character. So some of it is legit and some of it is him just kind of freaking out, mind getting
the
the
more
better
you
of
talk about it, it feels like it should be an Alan Moore character, but just putting out there, Alan Moore, if you feel like getting back into comics.
Definitely. And then on those, so on that same note, recently picked up these Dark Multiverse titles, and each one of these is a self-contained story. And what I love about them is these are kind of alternate or retellings of some of the classic stories. Like, here's the death of Superman, but a dark version of it with Lois Lane, etc., in getting imbued with the powers. I love that stuff, that Elseworlds kind of stuff. Almost like, what if the story went a different direction or a different way? In that note, in the same box, I've got some of these. DC did them a couple years back, these 100-page spectaculars. Again, self-contained stories, brilliant artwork in some of them, just one-shots. They've recently kind of came back at those and brought back the sort of 100-page spectaculars with Swamp Thing, DC villains, and a few others. And these are cool because these have more than one story in them, which I love. But again, all just self-contained, start, middle, end. And then at the back of my box here, I've got a couple of, and again, that sort of Elseworlds theme, the what-ifs. I'm always trying to find more of these what-if stories. So it's like, we all know, the Fantastic Four, but this one over here is, what if the Fantastic Four fought Dr. Doom? And it's not your traditional Fantastic Four. Spider-Man's a part of the team.
Yeah, and if there's anyone out there that aren't big readers, it might be worth them checking out the what ifs, because Marvel's doing that in their TV shows now. They're playing with that whole what if idea. So I'm sure there's going to be a lot of tie-ins. I'm sure they'll go different routes, but I'm sure they're going to borrow from those concepts.
So, I mean, like the title is, what if the Punisher had killed Daredevil? And I just like how these guys, and when you go through some of them, there's some serious writers behind them. Warren Ellis, Len Wein, Marv Wolfman, some great writers tackling once-off stories. And the artists, too, and some of them are just fantastic, great artists from that era. And I love that whole thing. Like, we all know Spider-Man marries Mary Jane. Well, what if he doesn't?
Yeah.
How does that affect his life? What are the ramifications, etc.? And those just, I don't know, for some reason they've always appealed to me. And in that same vein, sticking to the true traditional, just an amazing story told in one single issue, I think I'll sound off with arguably one of the best of all time, Sandman. Issue number 18, Dream Country. Sorry, issue number 19, Dream Country. Issue 18 was the cat story. But this, to date, is arguably one of the greatest single-told short stories, because it won. I'm trying to think of all the awards it's won. What did it win? It won the World Fantasy Award for standalone story. For this, it's kind of its take on A Midsummer Night's Dream by William Shakespeare, where Dream, you haven't got there yet, Dream goes.
That's what I actually want to ask. Is that volume 2 or volume 3 you're rating the TPs? I
think it's in volume 3 that you're going to come across it.
Because
it was a two-part. The first one happens in, I think, issue 13, where Dream goes back and William Shakespeare is trying to get this Midsummer Night's play together. But yeah, and it kind of plays out in issue 19, where you realize that it's actually fantasy characters, fairies, demons, etc., all acting out this particular telling of Shakespeare's Midsummer Night's Dream. And yeah, William, what you call it, Gaiman won the Fantasy Award for that. And since he won it, the body, I forget the governing body of it, changed the rules. They were so shocked and surprised that a comic book got the votes and won, that now they changed the rules, and unfortunately a comic book is no longer eligible to win, which I think is quite sad and stupid, considering some of the great stories that have been in comics. So I hope one day they change it, and other good comic book stories get the opportunity to win. But as it stands, Neil Gaiman has the one and only comic that has ever won that prestigious award and prize. And there it is in Sandman. Another great one. This isn't the original cover. It's one of the variant covers from Multiversity. Grant Morrison, Pax Americana, and the Multiversity in itself was just this massive undertaking by Grant Morrison. I've got the collected hardcover deluxe edition of it. But what for me makes this one stand out is Pax Americana happens in the middle of Grant Morrison's Multiversity. And I read a post somewhere online. Someone said that the story is great because Grant Morrison kind of touches on and tackles a few of the Watchmen characters. There's a Dr. Manhattan-esque character in it, etc. But the great thing about it is if you read Pax Americana traditionally from left to right to the end, it tells a story. But that same person who wrote the post said that you can read it from right to left, so from the back of the book to the front, and it tells a different story. And he's right.
It's insane.
Totally. And that, for me, just the thought that has to go into writing a comic that can be read one way and the other. Man,
just imagine the thought process. Like you wrote it, and then you read it backwards. You're like, damn it, this line doesn't work. Let's change it. Go back, go forth, go back. Like, it must be insanity. Like
100%, dude. So for me, it's a special one just from that unique angle right there. I was like, wow, mind blown. And apparently the same guy said that you can do the whole Multiversity the same way. You could read Multiversity one way and get one side of a story, and you can read it from the last issue back to the first and get a different side of the story. And again, Pax Americana sits in the middle. So you get it just...
I didn't even know that. I knew that about Pax Americana, but I didn't know that about the whole multiverse. That's
and I haven't undertaken to read Multiversity one way and then the other, but maybe one day when I have some spare time, I'll undertake to do that. Next one, a legendary issue. Yes. Alan Moore's start on the Swamp Thing, and before he could actually start his story properly in issue 22, he had to kind of wrap things up from Len Wein's run, and he did that in issue 21. So a lot of people regard this as one of the greatest single issues of comics ever written, the anatomy lesson. And here he just... the way he deconstructs the Swamp Thing and then reconstructs the myth is unbelievable. And for those that don't know, Alan Moore, when they first asked him to write the Swamp Thing, the first thing he said to Len Wein was, "Do I have to do it the way you did it?" And Len Wein's answer was, "Well, I hope not." And that really got his ideas going. Like the Len Wein way was that Alex Holland character has an accident, dives into the swamp to kind of put these chemical flames out of his body or off his body. And while he's in there, he absorbs the swamp and he becomes this living swamp creature. What Alan Moore did was Alan Moore said, well, no, I'm actually not going to do it like that. What if he actually died in that accident? And Alex Holland is dead, and the Swamp Thing is actually the swamp itself that's gained sentience. So it's the swamp, illusions of grandeur. And he basically did all of that, set that scene in this one issue over here. Brilliant piece of comic books there. Another one, a Grant Morrison classic, is Animal Man issue number 5, the Coyote Gospel issue. And I mean, you can Google it, Animal Man issue 5 or Coyote Gospel, and man, this issue is crazy because it's a very meta issue. It doesn't break the fourth wall, but it certainly shows you this meta existential view of comic books. Tragic story about this coyote character that comes across Animal Man. Yeah, man, just in and of itself, it brought tears to my eyes when I read it. What happens to this coyote? It's kind of playing on that whole Roadrunner coyote thing where he's trying to catch this thing. Every time he does, these tragic things happen to him. He falls off a cliff, a rock hits him, all of that stuff. And he's now brought into the DC world, and he's not he's not immortal. I lied. He is immortal still, and he's aware of what's happening to him. He is aware that there's this higher power, the writer / the artist, that are manipulating him, and he's at their mercy. And he's just stuck in this endless, torturous cycle. Things happen to him, the clock kind of resets, things happen to him again, we're falling off a cliff or whatever, and he's just trying to get Animal Man to help him. It's this desperate cry for help. And he's saying all the stuff to Animal Man, and Animal Man says to him, like, the thing with Animal Man is he can tap into and understand animals, and he can draw their powers and stuff. But because Coyote is obviously from a different universe or something, or the way the writer's written it, he just can't understand him. And it's this desperate plea as he's dying. And because he's trying to explain what's happening to Animal Man, the writer decides, okay, well, I'll just kill the character off and let him die. And he dies in Animal Man's hands. And as he's dying, the panel lifts and lifts and lifts. And then you see the hand with the pencil drawing the various... So it's a very meta,
that's
tragic
deep, dude.
issue. It's hectic, dude.
It's interesting you say that, dude. I don't know if we've talked about this, but I heard that that's a long-running theory of the Joker character. That certain it's takes that writers have sort of had on it is that Joker is aware that he's a comic book character. If you look at some of his panels, he doesn't talk to, like when he occasionally when he's broken the fourth wall, he talks to his guests or his fans in the speech bubbles, or he'll like pop his own speech bubble, and it's these very subtle things. And look, I know it's conspiracy talk, but they say that that's what makes the Joker such an original character, that he's aware that he's been designed to make Batman's life sort of miserable. So he's almost hyper aware. Again, that is just it's an article or video I watched once, and it was a very interesting take, very similar to what you're saying, that awareness thing. So
yeah, that metaphysical awareness, very crazy. Here's a little issue, and it's not for this issue particularly. There's literally, I think it's a 4 or 6 page piece at the back of this comic, written by Alan Moore, and it's the issue where they introduce Mogo, the living planet Green Lantern.
Okay.
And it literally, it's 6 pages. He introduces Mogo to the thing. This alien lands on the planet. He can't understand how he's a bad guy. The planet tries to attack him, subdue him, capture him. And as he's trying to get away from the planet, it increases its gravity to kind of pull him down, and he's trapped on the planet forever. And as the panel goes out, you see it's Mogo with his Green Lantern emblem on it, and they introduce Mogo that way. It was just, man, it's a very cool issue. And again, Alan Moore tells us mind-blowing, like, because at the time, no one knew that there was a living planet, Green Lantern.
Yeah.
And as it zooms out, that big reveal, last panel, it's like, what? And he told it in like 6 pages. It's just, again, a brilliant writer can do so much with the medium. I've got a few others that are amazing. Grant Morrison, part of one of my favorite all-star stories ever, All-Star Superman. The whole story is amazing, but if you just had to read this one issue number 3, he gives his abilities to Lois Lane for a day, and she gets to experience and see the world through Superman's eyes for one day.
Yeah, I remember that.
And man, it's just such a beautiful, again, you can read it as one single self-contained issue, and it's just, it tugs on the heartstrings. It's just such a beautiful, and you get a sense of how much he really does love her. And it kind of dawns on her, like, with all that he can do, with all this power at his disposal, and she's the one that he loves. That kind of hits home for her. Beautifully told story. Another epic one, Superman in Action Comics, issue 775. This is the story that was also turned into an animated, it's Superman versus the Elite. And I mean, that was an entire animated movie, and really that whole story was told in one single issue of Superman. one of my favorite all-time ones. The basic premise is this came out around about the time where Warren Ellis, Garth Ennis, all of them were doing those Authority comics on Image's side. A superpowered team like the Justice League. They have a Superman-like character, a Batman-like character, etc., a whole team. And the main difference is with the Authority, if they identify someone as like a world-ending threat, they don't send them to Arkham Asylum or to a prison colony. They just end the threat.
Mm.
And at the time, there was a lot of hype or people going, like Superman's dated, the Justice League is dated, because in a real world, this is what you would do. You wouldn't allow these threats to carry on.
Yeah.
And this was DC's answer to that. Why Superman is Superman, why Superman doesn't kill. And in this issue, they really show you, like, the kind of overarching theme is every single instance the man is holding back. he's like a god amongst us, and if he wanted to, like that, he could just change everything, and he doesn't. And the whole reasoning behind it and all that is in here, and I think they did a pretty good job of telling why in the animated, but amazing issue. And I'm going to stop on this last one. Oh, there's two. Sorry. This Spider-Man issue over here, I found this a long time ago. It's the kid who collects Spider-Man. And the basic story is Spider-Man goes out, he thwarts one of the wrecking crew, does his thing. At the end of his day, he stops past this fan who's been writing him fan mail, and he spends some time with this kid, and the kid asks him questions, what it's like to be Spider-Man, and he does some cool tricks for him. He just hangs out with this kid. And as he leaves, jumps out the window, he takes pause on the top of this wall outside this building, and out the side, you see that this is a terminal cancer ward that he was visiting, and this kid has terminal cancer, and his one wish was to meet Spider-Man. So Spidey goes and does it. And he does it in such a way that he does. You never hear or mention of the kid's illness. He's just there to be with the kid. And at the end of the comic, he takes pause because of just the weight that was sitting on him, like just what this kid is dealing with. Like this one brought tears to my eyes when I read it. I was just like, yeah, and then I thought I'd show off this one. It's from one of my favorite reads, Next Men, Agents of Hate. This particular issue, the crayon issue, is...
You said Next Men.
Yeah, man, and this whole issue here is in black and white, and it's the crayons issue. And it was designed so that if you wanted to, you could color the issue yourself with crayons. It's literally and I love that idea that this issue was designed to be colored in by you, reader. Such a cool take on a comic, such a cool idea. That's how it made its way into my collection there. So I've got so many more, but I thought I'd just give you some of the highlighted issues. I think to date I found about 50 what I would consider to be the greatest single issues ever, and I think I've got about 30 to 35 on that list so far. So I'm making progress.
Nice.
Yeah, man. And you? Any reads that you've had and done?
Not so much reads, dude. I do have a random few like gems. I don't know if I must bring them out. But yeah, and I have a confession to make. I have not read this because I did collect this in the time when I was just collecting first appearances and stuff. But I still really dig this issue, but for a few reasons. So this is Warrior Magazine, issue 1.
Nice. I know who's in there.
And yeah, it's the first appearance of V for Vendetta. But yeah, I really like that it's in a different form factor and it's in a magazine and stuff. So it's actually, I usually put it up behind me here. It's on my shelf because it's cool to have. Yeah. So dude, again, it is a first appearance stuff, but I just love, it's not even in that good condition, but I just like that it's in a different medium, in a different format and stuff like that. And it's, Alan Moore and stuff. But yeah, dude, and then something else I want to show you.
Can't go wrong with Alan Moore, can you?
This is super random, but I actually want to make a habit of every time we show off gems, I always like to bring out something really weird. But this is a book, it's not a comic, but it's a whole book on Grumpy Cat. And I don't know why, dude. This guy, it just feels like he's my spirit animal. Like and I'm not even a cat person, but it's like a whole book on like his expressions and like different poses and like lists of his, and it's just like everything Grumpy Cat, dude, and like portraits and stuff. And I don't know why, man. When he came out, I was just like, everything became about Grumpy Cat to me. Like, and I know it's old and not cool anymore, but like I've got it, man, and just it always brings a smile to my face. So, yeah, dude.
I think that is awesome, and you know, dude, it kind of goes back to one of the probably several issues that we've done with the recurring theme of it doesn't need to make sense to anybody else, but you. For whatever reason, if it resonates with you, if you look back at it and you go, man, this thing makes me smile. Man, this thing brings joy to me whenever I look at it or something like that. That's all the justification in the world.
Yeah, for sure.
So kudos for you for getting your Grumpy Cat on, man. I didn't even know there was a book.
Dude, well, I found it randomly in a bookstore, and I'm like, this. Are you serious? This actually exists. I was like, awesome.
You have to own it.
Yeah.
So, if you liked what Mark and I were talking about here, or just like our content in general,
please like, subscribe, and hit the bell notification for more videos.
And yeah, do us a favor and find us on the social media platforms like Facebook and Instagram.
See you in the next video.